Hi, this is my review of Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Box Set. I'm going to show you different angles of the box set because there isn't really like a default front part. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the quality of this box set and the volumes contained, and I'm also going to talk about the complete series as well, because this box set has the complete saga, the 6 volumes of Scott Pilgrim. So what is Scott Pilgrim? Maybe a lot of you already know about him because he's kind of a big deal, at least in my opinion, when it comes to the best representation of video games, manga, and pop culture in a graphic novel format. Well, let's start by talking about the quality of the box set. The box itself is pretty high quality, it's pretty good, pretty sturdy and glossy. However, and it's a testament to its sturdiness or hardiness is the fact that it has like an X-Acto knife cut. You cannot see it there, but those guys at Customs left their mark, and so the box has held together pretty well. And not only do you get the 6 volumes, you also get a poster. Let me see if I can get it into focus. It's a poster with most of the characters. You can see it's pretty big and it has some pretty cool composition right there. And as to the volumes themselves, they're also pretty high quality. They have a glossy cover and it's quite sturdy as well. The quality of the paper is good. It's kind of like that paper that is like good quality newspaper paper, so to speak. But overall, the quality of the physical integrity of the entire collection is quite good. As to the illustrations, they're also, well, in my opinion, they are top notch. Although there is some variation, because sometimes, well, you get this style of drawings, but it varies from book to book. So for example, some images of Scott Pilgrim seem quite different. For example, this is the first volume, and as you can see, it looks like an older Scott Pilgrim, but it's actually younger, and you can tell because of the way he dresses as well. And this volume, which is the last volume, he seems much younger there. So there is a bit of a difference between the graphic style. Not that much, it's just very subtle. You won't even notice it's there at times, but there is some variation. But despite that, the quality is pretty good. Now let's talk about what Scott Pilgrim is, the plotline, and I'm going to avoid spoilers. There will be some very minor spoilers, nothing major, nothing that ruins the surprises, the major surprises or the climax. Just a few tiny details that I'm going to mention, so that I have better time, an easier time explaining what I like about Scott Pilgrim. And well, let's start with, I'll give you a bit of background as to how I found out about this series. It was actually through the video game. I didn't know anything about Scott Pilgrim, but I saw this video game called Scott Pilgrim, and it had a style sort of like, it was a beat 'em up. That is the typical game that you go moving sideways across the screen, kind of like 2.5D instead of 3D, to put it in a way, because you can move up and down, and there is a sense of depth. And you start beating up bad guys and fighting against bosses. And when I started playing that game, it reminded me a lot of River City Ransom, that very old Nintendo Entertainment System video game. It's actually still there are games of River City Ransom still coming out in my if I'm not mistaken, and it wasn't it was quite logical that it resembled that game because man, there are many references to River City Ransom throughout the entire 6 volumes. So at times it felt like the author, which is Brian Lee O'Malley, he it seems like he was playing River City Ransom one day and he probably thought, oh, this could turn out into a pretty cool graphic novel if I develop the concept. So there are many references to that. It's not like an alternative version of River City Ransom, but there are some things in common. The fact that Scott Pilgrim is beating up a lot of people, a lot of bad guys, and rescuing his girlfriend, many things like that. So, well, after I played the game, I liked the graphic style and the plot a lot, even though I didn't know almost. They give you very little information as to the storyline. They just give you a few hints here and there. And then I saw that there was this movie, and I watched the movie, and I liked it quite a bit, although at times I felt like there were a lot of things that were missing, many scenes that felt underdeveloped or underexposed in a way, to put it in a way. And so I eventually got into the idea of getting the entire collection, and this is one of the best graphic novels series that I have read. It's pretty amazing. Let's talk about things from the perspective of Scott Pilgrim. Well, Scott Pilgrim is a pretty average guy, but at the same time, he seems like a superhero, at least in the things that he can accomplish. Not that he's too heroic. In fact, he's quite flawed as a person. He's this guy right here. He seems completely self-absorbed. When you start reading the first volumes, you're going to be a bit on his side, in my opinion. But then you start noticing that things don't add up. Things that Scott Pilgrim, the way he remembers things and the way he looks at the world is entirely different from many of the other ways in which the other characters experience the world. And you start to see that there's something going on. There's something suspicious. And one of the cool things of Scott Pilgrim, well, the main story happens in Canada, but it's easy to relate to the situations and the characters because they grab so many stereotypes and archetypes of geeks, of gamers, anything related to video games and manga and anime, and they combine it pretty well, and it's a very surreal world. At times it feels like an average city where the action is taking place, but then so many things related to video games such as River City Ransom, Super Mario Bros. 3, what other games? Perhaps the fighting games. I saw some details that are kind of like Street Fighter-y. Sonic the Hedgehog. So you're going to see many references and tributes to those famous video games, and there is suddenly jumping into the storyline, and suddenly that restaurant or that shopping mall or whatever place is being used for a scene, it turns into like the level of a video game. So that's quite cool, and it makes everything so much so colorful. It brings everything alive, because what will otherwise be a very boring and dull setting, it just transforms into the world of a video game. So I think that's one of the most charming aspects of Scott Pilgrim. So Scott Pilgrim, as I was telling you, it's kind of like, it's as if he has a self-cult of personality. He thinks like he's the greatest thing ever to happen. And it starts pretty normal with him telling his friends about how he got a girlfriend and a younger girlfriend. But then you see that some of his friends are kind of like, they do not approve of certain things that he does. And that's part of the mystery. And later on he meets Ramona Flowers. And Ramona Flowers, it's like love at first sight, at least for him. And as the story progresses, you notice that they have a lot of things in common. And so Scott's life turns around completely. It transforms into something else, something he didn't expect, something that breaks apart many of his concepts related to himself and to his friends and to the world around him. And things get even more complicated, where he finds out that Ramona has 7 evil ex-boyfriends, and these guys are not pretty happy to see Ramona, well, enjoying her relationship with Scott, and he has to fight them all. And in classic video game fashion, he's going to fight them one by one or in separate groups. So the entire all of the volumes have different fights, and they feel kind of like a particular volume is related to one of those evil boyfriends. And Scott also has baggage. He has actually an ex-girlfriend called MB Adams. You can see her here. And she's also a very important part of the plotline, in my opinion, because Scott makes her sound like, oh, she's the worst, she's a villain. And you kind of get interested into finding out what exactly happened between them. Another cool thing that I forgot to mention is that the back of each volume feels kind of like a game box. As you can see here, it's kind of like those NES games. It's pretty cool, and there are many different like video game scenes and graphics at the back, and that's pretty cool. And so, as I was saying, both Scott and Ramona have some dark pasts, some things that they need to overcome, and that's also a very important theme of Scott Pilgrim. You're going to see many characters, not only Scott and Ramona, that don't get closure, don't try to solve psychological issues, and they just like forget about things or put them aside, or like, what would you say, deny everything that has happened that they didn't like about their life. So I think that's a very important message, because you're going to see many problems and issues arising from not solving or kind of like meditating on those things that could have been better, that went wrong, so to speak. And that's the way the storyline develops. And Scott himself, you're going to see some major messages or aspects related to his girlfriends and ex-girlfriends. So, for example, MB kind of represents like the part of Scott that he doesn't want to remember, he wants to put aside, and then he doesn't want to solve anything related to that. And he also has his younger girlfriend, Knives Chow. It kind of represents like his present life, and Ramona represents Scott's future, his possible way to mature. I think those, well, younger people are going to enjoy these volumes, but those of us that have already been through that process where when you just come out of college and you're trying to get settled, find a job or find a purpose, and there is that awkward stage where you don't know exactly how to make a jump from one lifestyle to another. Maybe it's not so for many, but a lot of us have experienced that. So you see Scott struggling living in an apartment that isn't his. It belongs to his gay friend, the Wallace. He's also like a pretty funny character, and they're constantly making fun of him that he lives with a gay person. They even sleep in the same bed, so they're really like. And Scott has no job, so he's not exactly what would you say? Doesn't have much of a potential future, so to speak. Here's this is Wallace. He's actually pretty funny. Let me see this guy over here. So and that's another thing that I like about Scott Pilgrim. This saga doesn't pull any punches when it comes to jokes. There are going to be different gay jokes and unemployed jokes and geek jokes about almost everything. And I think you can see some of the a lot of the Canadian humor here. They make fun of Canada in very subtle ways, and they make fun of geek culture in general. It's pretty funny. And you're going to see Scott, as I was telling you, obtaining so many things related to video games, like weapons and power-ups and such. And you're even going to see some references like health meters or health bars and one-ups or lives. And there are many ways in which the fourth wall is broken. Sometimes you, the reader, you're going to be included into the jokes. They find a way to make a reference, and the reader experienced this also, or something like that. I don't want to spoil too many things, because many of the coolest things in Scott Pilgrim comes related to the surprises that you experience, that you didn't expect this, and you're suddenly like part of the story in a way. And many of the characters are also referencing the saga as a collection of books. They're kind of like, oh, you didn't remember that happened in volume 3 or whatever. So that's pretty funny. And all of the different enemies are also like video game themed. You're going to find some references to Double Dragon, and the way each of these characters has so many crazy powers and abilities. It kind of reminds you of those anime series or manga where everybody has something special without reason, like all those mecha anime where everybody has a giant robot that was kind of insane. It kind of feels almost like the dog has a robot that he can pilot. So, and here everybody has special weapons and concepts, and so that's pretty funny. Now I'm going to focus a bit more to further avoid spoilers into what I felt and thought when during the reading of this saga and after reading the entire volume collection. I think Scott Pilgrim gives you a lot of life lessons about maturity, about facing the facts of looking at yourself in the eye, sometimes literally. Trust me, that you will understand why, and in these volumes. And at times I also think it's about like a story of self-improvement, and looking at life as how it is, and looking at yourself, and just being like sort of like having tough love, like, oh, face it, you sucked at this, you are terrible at that, or you did this all wrong, or how can you expect to handle this if you couldn't handle this part of yourself, or if you made so many wrong choices when you were young, how do you expect to make things better now that you're an adult and you haven't changed anything about you, that you're still doing the same thing. And so Scott, it serves almost like a vehicle for the reader to reflect on many things, and at the same time you're going to be laughing about so many things related to the characters and to the environment they are experiencing, the video game references. And even though there are a lot of fight moments, some of the major problems are also solved by using Scott's wit. He finds a way to outthink his adversaries, so that's pretty nice. But I think there's also like a bit of nostalgia or a bit of sadness throughout the entire storyline, considering the ending as well, and that adds it a very what do you say, melancholic but not unpleasant feeling when you read this the entire adventures of Scott Pilgrim, because when you look at it as a whole, it seems that even though there are so many almost superhero-like elements, so many otherworldly things that happen because of the constant theme of video games jumping in and out into reality, you can see that it's actually a very average story centered around how people sometimes get too self-absorbed, and how you lose connection with others, how sometimes you overestimate or underestimate things. And the graphics, there is the art style of the graphic novels also accentuate this or enhance it, because it's Canada, and at night you can see so many images of snow and wilderness and darkness. So for example, here you have a little trip Scott takes to the wilderness part, and there are also some other scenes when it's night, and you see some very sharp contrasts of snow and the night sky. Here you can see a bit of that. And this also works with what I was telling you about Scott, about his kind of like solving his own issues, trying to grow up. And you see there are many things that you will not like about Scott. Maybe if you have acted like Scott Pilgrim, and I believe that a lot of people have acted like Scott Pilgrim, maybe you will feel identified with him. But at the same time, there are many things that you will probably won't like about the character, and that also kind of like breaks your expectations during the first volumes as you understand what kind of type of person Scott is. But depending on your outlook or your perspective, you may actually enjoy how the character eventually turns into someone else. That's the way to put it. By the end, he's still Scott Pilgrim, but he feels at the same time like an entirely different person. And I actually think that the conclusion of the storyline is quite satisfactory. And I also forgot to mention that each volume contained like different side comics with additional details and funny stuff, so that's also a good addition. And I also noticed that I really liked the entire saga as a whole, because when I read the last page of the volume, I kind of felt like emptiness, like that's it, but I want more. And not that it's bad that it left you unfulfilled. It's actually, as I was telling you, I liked it a lot, but it felt so empty that something suddenly ended, and I spent like for probably 2 or 3 days like thinking about Scott Pilgrim and the message it left in me. So I think that's the mark of a great graphic novel, that it keeps you thinking about it. Even until up to today, I still sometimes read the books, and I keep thinking and wondering and meditating on the messages that it gives you, besides the hilarity related to Scott's crazy antics and all the jokes. So this is a really good collection, the a precious little box set. I recommend that you get it. I don't think you will be disappointed when you read Scott Pilgrim. I can only think of a type of person that will not enjoy Scott Pilgrim, in my opinion. Those that aren't familiar with the whole video game culture. I have given this. Some people have borrowed these books for a while to read them to see if they get into Scott Pilgrim, and those I'm talking about people who don't play video games and aren't that much into anime and manga, and they still enjoy the series. But there were many references that they did not understand, and obviously because they are not familiar with the type of culture that is presented in these books. So if you are not, if you have never played the Nintendo Entertainment System or the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, there will be some jokes that will simply not hit home. But other than that, I think that everyone will enjoy Scott Pilgrim. Some will enjoy it a lot more because of the references, of the pop culture references related to video games, manga, anime. And as I was telling you, despite all the cool action scenes, you're going to be seeing Scott Pilgrim fighting, using martial arts and special weapons. Almost everybody in all of the volumes knows how to fight. That's also quite funny. Everybody seems like a video game character. But as I was telling you, despite all that, it gives you some pretty powerful messages about yourself, about your life, about the way you look at life and others, about how they look at you. So Scott Pilgrim It's an excellent series. Definitely consider getting it, especially if you like video games and manga. And I also think that, for example, if you play role-playing games such as Valor or OVA, or comedy games such as Made, you will find a lot of things here that will give you inspiration to run better role-playing game sessions, enhancing those themes of action, comedy, and perhaps put a strong message related to life in some of them. Not to be too dramatic, but there's actually a lot of good material here, good philosophical material, so to speak. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.